Music theory generally scares a lot of producers. But picture this, imagine it as a big cake. You don't need the whole thing to actually be full. That was a terrible metaphor, but you probably get what I'm saying here. Majority of the songs that you listen to that are charting on Billboard all use just a little slice of this cake. This video, I'm breaking it down made easy for producers by a producer myself. This is all the music theory I use to improvise on the keys and basically have the freedom to make cool melodies for my beats. I originally intended this video to be part of my private program for producers, but I decided to put it out for free cause why not? I'm actually making this video for all the soulless loops getting spammed every day to my email. Follow along with a keyboard or with your DAW just to make it easier. Enjoy it. Let's start from the basics, right? Scales. There are major scales and minor scales. The easier major scale to remember is literally C major because it's all white keys from the first C to the second one. And it goes like this. Then for minor scales, we start from the first A to the second A. And this is also easy because it's white keys as well. Now, this might be already weird for you because why the heck are they minor and major scales if they literally have the same notes? Well, here's where giving numbers to our notes actually come to clutch. We can give a number to every note of a scale, right? So this is gonna be our first, second, third, fourth, and so on. So what is different between these two scales is the journey they take to go from one note to the other. For example, if we take the third from both scales, right? The third on the C major scale is gonna be E. The third on the A minor scale is gonna be a C. And knowing also the definition of a semitone and tone, which is basically this is a semitone. So there are no notes between these two ones. This is a tone because there's this note right here that's in the middle. So given this, to go to the third in the C major scale, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones, while to go to the third of the A minor scale, we have 1, 2, 3 semitones. So this already breaks down to you the difference between minor and major scale and what makes a minor scale sound darker than a major one. So I think it's now time to actually get into chords. Basically, a chord is multiple notes together, and the simplest chord ever is basically a triad. We're gonna take the first, the third, and the fifth, and we have a chord like this. This is a C major chord because the tonic note of this chord is C. So it's basically the bass note that holds the chord together. For every note of a scale, I can form a chord. For example, working on our C major scale, I can have C major, this is D minor, and the reason why I'm saying is D minor because if we see the major chord, again, 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones to get to the third. In this case, 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 semitones to get to the third of this chord. So we know it's a minor chord. So C major, D minor, E minor, F major, C major, A minor. Now this is kind of a weird chord because this is called the B minor diminished. Why? 1, 2, 3. So we know the third is a minor one, but this chord to be a minor should be like this. But we're diminishing the fifth. So it goes like this. B minor diminished, C. These are all the chords you have inside the scale. Going to A minor, we got A minor, again B minor diminished, C major, D minor, and then repeat again. Now let's talk about chord progressions and why they sound good. A very common chord progression is, for example, the one in C major that goes like this. With chord progressions, we also talk about numbers. So in this case, given that I'm working on a C major scale, I'm going with a progression that is like first to 1, 6, 4, 5, and then again 1. It's important to name chords with numbers because basically you can apply it to every scale. So if I go on F major and I want to do this chord progression, it's gonna go like this. Because these are the relative numbers to this scale. So you probably start to get the process, right? The reason why certain chord progressions and melodies work well together is because they create this thing called color response, or basically building tension and resolving it, right? Usually the easiest way to actually resolve some tension is by going from the fifth, so it's called the dominant fifth, to the one, to the tonic note. So in this case, 1, 5, 1. This is a very common chord progression used in classical music, for example. If we're gonna go for something more popish, we could have again. And this is basically the chord progression that I've done before. Now, you might have asked, okay, what did you do there? Because I've changed some chords, right? They were in the classic. And this is where also chord inversions come into clutch. So basically, we're now expanding and saucing up the theory that we already have, right? We know scales. We know chords. So now how do we spice up these things? Because these chords sound pretty boring to me. So given our C major chord, we see that it's composed by 3 notes, right? But since these notes work always well together, we can basically have inversions of it of however we like. So for example, I have this chord, right? But if I take this C and I bring it up here, this is still a C major, but it sounds different because the voices are different. You're gonna hear the difference right now. And then I can do the same thing, bring this E up here. And these are all the 3 inversions of a C major scale, of a C major chord. For example, a very popular song that you probably know, and it's actually composed by Beethoven, uses this thing on the Moonlight Sonata 3rd movement. And it basically does every inversion of a C sharp minor chord, which is this. So this. And it basically inverts it and does an arpeggio with it. Right? So you see what I'm talking about here. Another thing to spice up chord is adding notes to them, so adding extensions. You probably have heard the 7ths, the 9ths. What it all means is, I showed you also before, basically we have a triad, we basically add the 7th to it. So this is gonna be, given this is the 5th, 6th, the 7 is here. You see how nostalgic this sounds? And if we actually break it down, it's actually a C major plus a E minor chord. That's why it gives it this kind of nostalgic vibe. I can also add the 9th to it, which is gonna be, this is the 7th, 8th, 9, So you see how already we have a lot of things that we can work off, because now I know that notes that are composed in this chord, so I can play them however I want. And I can do this thing with every chord. So if I take F major, for example, and the 7th, this is 5th, 6th, 7 here. So I can already work on a progression like this. What I'm doing here is basically literally just playing from those chords, but what I'm actually using is inversions of them and adding extensions. And you can see how already you can do so many different things with these chords. Another important thing is actually adding bass. Now usually you add the tonic note of every chord as a bass, because you can see if I play the tonic note of a C major chord, which is going to be obviously C, it kind of sounds full together, right? But if I play, for example, its 3rd, you see it kind of already sounds dissonant. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use it, but usually these are used to create tension. And if you just wanna, usually in pop songs, everything that is used is just the tonic note. So for example, if I'm doing a D minor chord, which is this one, let's add some other notes. Actually, let's add the 7th to it, right? So 5th, 6th, 7 here. You see what I'm talking about here. Other thing that you should know, octaves are basically the same note playing 12 notes up. So these are used to create a little bit more of a fuller sound. Popular example is basically like Campanello from Liszt. I actually played it wrong, but you get the point. Or we have simple thirds, where it's basically I'm playing 2 notes together. From here, let's go back to our chord progressions, right? And let's take the progression that we were doing it before. And let's try to spice up this chord progression based on the knowledge that we currently have, right? So again, we're working on the C major scale. And now we know variations of a chord and also extensions. So let's try to play a little bit with that. And as I play, I'm gonna explain what I'm doing here. So let's start from our C major. And I wanna add a 7 to it. Now let's go to A minor. What I did here, for example, going to the first chord, right? This is a C major chord. I'm playing every note of a C major chord and I added the 7th here. And then I played it here. Then I went to A minor. So these are all chords that are composed from A minor, because this is the chord. So we have we have A, E, A, C, E, A. And then I played it like this. And then I added the 2nd to it. This is called a sus chord, for example. You see how tension it creates. It's, for example, used in Still Dre produced by Dr. Dre, where it goes like. So when it does like this is the 2nd of the chord, and it's basically forming a sus chord. You basically bring the 3rd down a semitone. And I use that just to spice up the chord a little bit. We can also call this some kind of variation. So going back to our chord progression, what I did. Then let's go to F major. And I'm gonna add the 7th again. What I did here on the G major, instead of playing like this, I basically played the 6th instead of the 5th, so like this. And it basically becomes an E minor, but I was still playing the G as a bass, so it still kind of made it a G. And then I went back to C. You see how I'm playing here. And this is basically like, bro, everything that it's used for pop songs, like the basic of chord progressions and how you create tension and how you build around them. Now, let's go a little bit more in depth on chords and let's talk about some other type of scales and how you can combine them together to create some more interesting chord progressions. For example, I want to talk about the harmonic minor scale, which is also pretty common to create really dark atmospheres. Let's go back to A minor. It's basically the same as before. But the last note, instead of playing a C, we're gonna play a C sharp. And you're gonna notice that instead of having just 2 semitones, before we only had these 2, now we also add this one. And the reason why it's so cool is because this is also really used in classical music. We can have our first minor chord, and then we can have the 7th, then we can have the 5th major, and then resolves again to this one, right? Everything I'm doing here is basically, again, playing the A minor chord, then I'm gonna go to the 5th chord of the scale. Remember, the 5th resolves really well on the 1st, and the 5th of the scale is, again, still E. But now, since we added this note here, I can play E major. Because this 3rd, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 4 semitones to go to the 3rd, so this makes it a major. And then I'm adding the 7th to it. Right? 5, 6, 7, 8. Wanna know something cool? We can combine this scale to a major scale. Listen to what happens here. What I did is I combined the first scale before to the major scale, so we create this cool progression that goes to the A, right? I'm taking the same chord progression from before, But now I'm basically combining scales to create this kind of like flow process that goes from one chord to another. So instead of just playing C and then A, I'm using the the fifth from before to actually go to the A. So I'm going like, it creates like this more like a smoother sound kind of. And for example, what I did at the end, this is called a passing tone. I'm using this note here to pass to the C. This is used a lot, especially also by Mozart, to go to the fifth basically and then resolve, right? It's also used in jazz, for example, to go from. Now, we know pretty much a lot already about chords, progressions, melody, everything that we've said so far. Now, let's take it a little step further and let's add some final touches to this chord progression that we're working on. And I'm gonna tell you some cool things that you can do to play around like this, like chords. Now, listen what changes though if I play like this. I basically changed two chords inside, right? I'm gonna make it as simple as possible. So again, C major, we got our fifth with the seventh, and then A minor. But watch what happens if instead of a A minor here, I resolve it with a F major. It sounds more like of a nostalgic sound to it, right? And that's because if you notice, A minor is composed of A, C, and E, right? But if I add a F to this chord, it becomes a F major seventh, right? This F major, I'm adding the seventh. So basically, you see that every minor chord has its related major seventh chord. Same way where C major, if I add B to it, it becomes basically a combination of E minor and C major. I can do the same with A minor. So basically, instead of resolving simply this chord here to A minor, I'm resolving it to F major seventh, which is very similar. And then what I did at the end, I basically transformed this F major into an F minor. This is something really used by Radiohead. It's even in the Steven Universe chord progression, for example. That's pretty popular, and it's something that it's usually used. This is also a very common chord progression. And it basically creates this nostalgic feeling. Basically what I did is just transform this F minor, the F major into an F minor, and notice how I'm still using this note, which was part of the A minor harmonic scale, right? As this one, I'm using it to make a F minor chord. And if I want, I can also add this, which is gonna be the seventh of F minor, right? And this was really about it. Like, this is how you can basically move around the keyboard and make chord progression. I can apply this process to every scale. And you can see that basically, to break it down, it's all about finding a chord progression, playing around with inversions of the chord and the bass, right? Like I just played them here, and by adding basically extensions of a chord and using this passing chords, like you can really play around it however you want. And like, keep in mind, this applies to minor scales as well. For example, going to C minor, I can do it like, let's break down what I just played here. Bass note is the tonic note of C minor, so it's C. this that note that I played here is the 7th note of a C minor chord. Let's count up the notes. 1, 3rd, 5th, and then we got 6, the 7th. So this is, I know that this is the 7th, and then 8, 9. So this is the 9th of it. 7th, 9th. So what I did here is, right, tonic note, the 7th. This is the 3rd, 5th, and then I added the 9th. And I inverted the chord, right? Because this is still a C minor chord to me. You can do the same with like what I did here. Play a B flat major, which is part of the scale, right? I made a chord of this. Then I added this note here. And if you notice, let's count up the notes of this chord again. This is the 5th. This is the 7th. 5, 6, 7 here. And what does a major chord with a 7th resolve really good to? To its related 5th. So B flat is the 5th of this chord here. So if I do it like this. So what I did again here. This is the 7th of this chord. So that's what I did. I hope this video was useful. Hope you learned something valuable out of it. This is basically all the music theory that I use to improvise on the keys, playing on the piano. This is what I've been using to like basically write all of my beats, melodies and stuff. This is what basically majority of pop songs use. And I really hope that like this kind of gave you a clearer idea on how music theory works. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Go follow my Instagram if you haven't already. And I'ma see you on the next video. Peace out.